History is full of monarchs who ruled vast empires, but records of Hazrat Sulaiman, known to many as King Solomon, described a dominion that reached far beyond human borders. His subjects included animals, the unseen entities known as jinns, and the very elements of the earth. He could travel across the globe in a matter of hours on a throne carried by the wind. If he required treasure from the deepest trenches of the ocean, he simply commanded his forces to dive into the abyss and retrieve it. But this total authority over the physical and supernatural realms raised a difficult question. Could a king who commands the winds also bend the laws of fate to his will? In this tradition, the concept of Taqdeer, or destiny, is viewed as the ultimate unhackable script of the universe. It is a divine timeline that dictates exactly what will happen, regardless of the power of the observer. If a ruler can command a storm but cannot alter a single line of his own future, then even the most absolute throne has a limit. 2 trials in Sulayman's court would eventually test this boundary, one involving the king himself, and another involving a demon who thought he was smarter than God. The first trial began when Sulayman's Jinn forces captured a herd of mystical, winged horses from a remote island and presented them at the palace. The horses were so magnificent that Sulaiman became completely absorbed in their beauty. As he inspected each creature, the hours slipped away, and the worldly wonder of his kingdom took center stage. By the time he looked up, the sun was dropping below the horizon. In his fascination, he had allowed the time for his obligatory afternoon prayer, Asr, to pass by. For a prophet king, this was a moment of profound realization. He saw that the physical wonders he commanded had become a veil, momentarily separating him from his spiritual duty. Seeking forgiveness, Sulaiman turned to the divine. In a rare suspension of the natural order, God halts the sun in its tracks, freezing the sunset and holding back the night just long enough for the king to complete his prayer. Once the prayer was finished, Sulaiman ordered the wings of the horses to be clipped. He chose to sacrifice the very objects that had distracted him, proving that his devotion outweighed his desire for worldly power. The lesson was clear. True authority begins with recognizing one's own limits. Even the monarch of the winds must operate within the timeline set by the divine. While the king learned humility, one of the most powerful jinns in his court remained defiant. During a debate on destiny, this jinn stood before the throne and claimed that with enough power and planning, he could rewrite fate himself. To prove his point, the jinn identified a specific prophecy, that the daughter of a wealthy man was destined to marry a certain prince. The jinn vowed to step in and ensure this marriage could never take place. He kidnapped the girl while she was still a child and hid her inside a stone chamber located in the heart of a magically concealed, impenetrable jungle. Year after year, the jinn provided for her basic needs, but kept her entirely isolated. She grew into a young woman without ever seeing another human being. As the girl reached adulthood, the jinn's arrogance grew. He looked at his hidden fortress and was convinced he had successfully blocked the mechanisms of destiny. He had made the mistake of equating physical isolation with the ability to stop the will of God. He believed that if he could hide the girl from the world, he could hide her from her fate. The jinn's perfect isolation was finally breached by a catastrophic storm. Off the coast of the hidden jungle, a ship was torn apart by waves. 2 survivors managed to crawl ashore and seek refuge in the only structure they could find in the wilderness. One was a simple sailor, and the other was a young man, who happened to be the prince prophesied to marry the girl. Trapped together while the storm raged outside, the 2 young people formed a bond. Believing they might never be rescued, they were married by the sailor right there, inside the jinn's own prison. This diagram shows the path of the jinn's intervention. By dragging the girl to this coastal jungle, he inadvertently placed her directly in the path of the prince's shipwreck. Without the kidnapping, the prince, whose ship was lost miles away, would never have met her. The very act intended to break the prophecy became the engine that fulfilled it. Every move the jinn made to outsmart fate only served to deliver it. Unaware of the marriage, the jinn decided it was time to claim his victory. He uprooted the stone house from the jungle, flew it through the clouds, and dropped it directly in front of Suleiman's throne. He boasted to the king that the prince had surely perished at sea, and that the girl's future had been successfully rewritten. Suleiman calmly ordered the door of the house to be opened. To the Jinn's horror, the girl emerged hand in hand with the very man she was destined to marry. The Jinn was left paralyzed by the sight of his own failure. For his cruelty and his attempt to challenge the divine, Suleiman passed judgment, and the Jinn's defiance ended in a permanent sentence. In the end, these stories suggest that worldly power, no matter how absolute, operates within a larger architecture. We may build empires or attempt to conquer nature, but the ultimate design of reality remains in hands far greater than our own, and even our rebellions are already part of the tapestry.